Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. It's 9 o'clock, which means it's time for another video. And today I'm going to have on the channel somebody who in the last 2 or 3 years has literally come out of nowhere and set the magic world on fire. He has released numerous tricks, some of which are considered to be some of the most popular workers in that have ever been released. He's absolutely everywhere. I personally went to see him lecture at the Magic Circle recently, which is a huge honor in itself, and his lecture was incredible. He's a performer, he's a creator, he's an inventor, and on top of that, he's a really nice guy as well. He's one of these people that will help anybody, no questions asked. I'm so glad to have him on Magic TV. I am, of course, talking about the one and only Lord Harri Harrington. How are you doing, Harry? You okay?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you so much for an introduction. Oh, bless. Thank you so much, Craig.
Loved your lecture. Loved your lecture. You were amazing. You were on fire.
Oh, the first one, I was so nervous at that first trick because the coin stuff is really hard, actually. But yeah, it was all down to your advice a couple of hours before.
Well, man, you didn't look nervous at all. You looked like you were having the time of your life. And it was a great lecture, but obviously, it's true. You've come out of nowhere, and you're like everywhere. It's like, oh, right, here's another trick by Lord Harri. Here's another trick by Lord Harri. Oh, this one's really good as well. And now I'm finding you on other projects that isn't even your trick, and you're still on there. Your notoriety within the industry has just risen. Your stock has risen massively, which is why I reached out to you and I said, dude, I need you on the channel. Come on and let me interview you. So thanks so much.
No, thanks for having me, Craig. It's a real honor. I've always seen you about, and I've never really had the chance or the opportunity to speak to you properly. So it's really cool that I'm able to have you as part of my journey now, which is wicked. So
yeah, well, I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan.
Oh, bless you.
Big fan. Well, you know what? I want to find out. We've got to know each other a little bit better recently, but I still don't know a great deal about you. So I'm going to enjoy a lot of the time when I interview people. I know their story inside out and back to front, but I'm going to be learning a lot during the course of this interview as well, which is good. It's my favorite type of interview. So for everybody that may not know who you are or might not be aware of your journey into magic, we're going to start at the very beginning.
Okay.
And as is traditional on Talk Magic, we're going to start with your origin story. So how did you get into magic? How did all of that happen?
Yeah. Do you want the long answer?
Hey, dude, this is Talk Magic. Sean Farquhar went for 6 hours. You got buckle in. We're going to be going for a while. Yeah, long answer's fine.
So I've watched a lot of these interviews, and everyone seems to have a similar story, and it's quite nice that I don't have that. But it did start off the same way. So there was a magic kit that I got given for Christmas. I think I was about 5. And I didn't really get into it whatsoever. But my dad learned all the tricks and then he started performing it over Christmas. So I remember being really amazed by it and then trying to learn something from that kit. And it just didn't feel like it was magic. It felt like it was just cheap cardboardy props and nothing what my dad just done. So that was it. It just, never pursued with it. It was gone. I then joined the army and at my phase 2 training. So when I did all the basic stuff and I learned how to be a soldier and I went into my trade training, which was a medic. Okay. We were out on a night out and this other medic was with me who was also in training, but he was a bit of he was a proper character, right? And he knew a bit of magic. And I remember being very intoxicated next to him and he did a French drop, which what I know now is a French drop. Like he made a coin vanish. And I remember being absolutely amazed by it. So that was the first time really I saw it at a later age. Yeah, I pushed him so much for him to show it to me. He taught me it. And then I went out with a friend back home in Germany. And yeah, I immediately knew that I couldn't just make this coin vanish. I had to do something else. So I started plotting with my friend how I would distract the audience or perform this thing, make the coin vanish, and he would to load a duplicate coin underneath someone's drink. And we're just messing around, just having a laugh, basically trying to get drinks for free by doing that. And that was the only thing I learned. And again, it just died off. When I left the army, so this was like 2018, something like that, I think.
And how old were you in 2018, Harry, when you left the army?
When I God, I got to think. I was about 26, I think.
Okay.
That makes sense. Yeah. I've been out. No, I've been out way longer than that. I've been out for almost 10 years now. So, gotta try and think. Yeah, it's about right. Maybe around there. Somewhere the time frames around there. But when I left, all I knew was medical stuff. So I moved to Wales because I'm not from here, right? So I moved to Wales and I got involved with a local rugby club with some other ex-military guys. And at some point, the job that I did, I was doing 4 days working, 4 days off. Okay, so I had a lot of time to do a lot of stuff. And at rugby, I never played rugby before, so I was learning the game whilst I was playing with these lads, and I was just fast at running. I was a proper Forrest Gump person. Eventually, I came across Scam School on YouTube, and it was a side step and stack, right? So I just bought my first house. I'm pretty much like got not much money. I'm playing rugby, not really good at it. And then I come across this side step and stack stuff. And I'm like, oh man, this is quite cool. The pub that was down the road from us, I didn't know anybody. I'm not from here, right? So bought this house, moved in, don't know anyone, apart from the rugby lads, which live a little bit further away. So I learned how to stack a deck and started playing around with that. And that was one of the first things in walking into a pub where no one knew me, and just bought a pint and just started approaching someone saying, oh, hey, can I show you this? It's something I'm playing with. And I just went into this like sidestep and stack stuff, right? And yeah, before you knew it, it started becoming a repeating thing of the following day I was there or the next week or whatever. Oh, Harry, you got a new trick. And I kind of started searching for it. I found all these different bits, you know, buying decks of cards and or the invisible deck, and all these like beginner tricks. But I actually only started that about 7 years ago. This is my 7th year now in Magic, so that's literally where it's all come from. So yeah, it just grew and grew from there, and eventually I found I went online and I joined the Magic Cafe and started trying to reach out to people there. And there was a gentleman by the name of Rudy, I can't quite remember where it was, Rudy Tinocchio or Tinkini or something like that in America. And he actually agreed to do a Zoom call with me. So that was pretty, big stuff. I was like, oh, who's this guy? And he starts chatting with me and he just starts showing me some stuff. I'm thinking, oh, this is incredible. And yeah, that was the first time I actually really met a proper magician. Then for a friend of a friend, he says to me, oh, Harry, you're getting into magic. My friend's a full-time professional performer. He says, why don't you hook up and just have a chat? And that's when I met Nick Stein. And Nick said to me, Harry, what is it that you want from this? Because you can do a hobby or you can make it go further. And I said to him, I'd like to make it go further. I would actually like to perform and, make some money off this and take it to a career. And he wrote me a little checklist. There was like a JOL wallet, loops, there was all this random stuff. And that's how it all started happening. That's how it all came about.
Wow. And at what point was that? How far ago? So you got into magic 7 years ago.
Yeah.
At what point did you kind of go, I'm going to become a professional? I'm going to start making a living doing this. I felt so good performing that I kind of instantly knew that I wanted to get there quickly. It was probably after like 4 or 5 months, I thought, I can actually, if I invest enough time into this, I could take this further. So at that point, I already had my mind made up of what it was that I was going to do with it to begin with. Okay, well, let's break this down because there's a lot of questions from. So I suppose the first question is, you got into magic really late on. If you discount the magic set that you got as a kid, you got into magic really late on. I get a lot of people on the channel that go, oh, I'm 30, I'm getting into magic, and I feel like I'm too old for this. Like, I mean, that from what you're telling me here, it's never too late, right? No.
I was only, I'm 33 now, so I must have just got into it when I was just turned 26 or something like that, so it wasn't towards the end of my year being 26. That's when it all started really happening.
And you got into magic about 7 years ago. When did you go pro? How long after getting into magic did you say, I'm going to make my full-time income from this?
It was pretty much, I would say, about 2 or 3 years afterwards, because I remember having a real bad experience. The first year of learning magic, I didn't have anybody. This is before I reached out to a magic society and who took me on. All I knew was the online exchange of trick decks, and I generally thought all the props were the stuff that did it for you. So my first gig was after 6 or 7 months. I was booked for a wedding and I rocked up with this beauty case full of gaff decks. And I generally believed or thought you just have your pockets full of gaff decks, right? You do one trick and then you just find an opportunity to ditch it and switch out for a different deck, do another trick. I had no idea or concept of any, I just no clue. And I got caught out really badly to the point where I was put in front of a horseshoe of people and these were the wedding guests. There was no more, right? And I couldn't switch decks in and out. I had different colored ones. There was blue and reds and yellows. No idea, but I just knew I couldn't switch the decks out. And after that, I said to myself, I'm going to commit to just learning sleight of hand for at least 12 months. And that's exactly how it happened. So I started learning how to do passes and breaks and controls. And after that year, I really then started pushing it forward and doing more performances. So I think really making a substantial income came about 4 or 5 years after doing it. But I had always different visions, because I think very much like yourself, magic itself performing is one way, but how could you make another avenue within that same industry? So, creating magic was one way. So that came about. So I had two streams of it. Being part of the Cardiff Magic Society, there was another opportunity to get involved with something else, like trying to get project funding. And so there was another avenue there. And lecturing, when that finally came about, there was another avenue. So all of a sudden, like, magic isn't just this straightforward, oh, I perform and get paid. There were other ways of how to make the income. And I kind of got involved in a little bit of all of those things. And that's really started turning, where I'm making a real comfortable living with it.
That's great. That's awesome. So what advice, I'm gonna delve deep on a lot of this stuff.
Okay.
What advice would you give somebody who wants to become full-time pro?
So
and they they can see themselves doing it as a career. Is there any advice to somebody that's jumped into it very early on? And
I think being able to listen to people with experience, to take criticism on board, because it's not, at the end of the day, people aren't criticizing you, they're trying to make you a better person. That the delivery of how that gets fed to you can sometimes be quite offensive, or you might think it's very rude, when actually there is an underlying sentence there which you should maybe just listen to and adapt to it. Also, surround yourself with people that you inspire, or who inspire you, because you'll learn not just their way of performing, you also learn their way of thinking, and that can rub off quite a lot. Which is eventually what happened with me. One of my big inspirations was Kieran Johnson, who I fell in love with producing ice cubes. That was his effect, and it got me talking to him. And then I found out he only lives an hour and a bit away from where I am. So I started going to his house all the time, and I just learned so much about him, the way he thinks, the way he performs, all of that stuff, which really made me want to do that type of magic rather than just doing some card tricks. I mean, it's incredible making ice appear, making lollipops appear. It's the fun playfulness. So if anybody getting into magic, I would try and learn enough, learn a little bit of everything, so you've got a very established repertoire, so to speak, and then really hone in on the people which you get inspired by a lot and like their tricks, because we've all got those people in magic. So many of my friends always mention Chris Congreve and how many great tricks he's got, and Gary Jones. There's so many people that name or constantly love those guys' tricks that they almost become so inspired by them that it influences how they they continue performing. And that's kind of what I would say. So learn the people that are around you, and then get to know them and try and pick a little bit of everything, because it's the best version you can be. If you're inspired by all these different people, it would only make like a hybrid performer that you're going to become, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you talked about the Cardiff Magical Society there,
Yes.
and you talked about joining a magic club.
Yeah.
How important is it to join a magic club? Because so many people don't these days. They're all online, or they've learned everything off YouTube, like you did with Scam School to a certain degree, and they never have that experience of going to a magic club.
Yeah. Oh man. So a magic club, when I first got there, I was one of the younger people joining, there was a lot of older guys there. And already I could tell that it wasn't, how do I word this? It wasn't what I was expecting. Okay. Now I got invited by the then vice president to just come along. And lucky enough for me, I immediately met Lance Bowen. I then I attended a lecture with John Carey. I mean, I've never been to a magic club before. I've been invited to come along, and John Carey's doing a lecture, right? So straight away, I'm like, what is this? There's this guy, he's just sharing magic. It's incredible. I love it. Bought his book, Minimalistica. Absolutely just loved it. And I thought, this is what a club's like all the time. Great, I'll come again. And then you really see that actually it's not always like that. The lectures are kind of the highlight of a club. But it was important because it got me to reach out and befriend other like-minded people. And some of the best friendships I've formed have been with these magicians around me. And there's so many guys like Lance now. I think he's just released his effect of Alakazam, the Nevea principle. And I mean, having somebody on your doorstep, which is Lance, is so powerful. And even Ash, everyone knows Magic Ash. He was one of my first big, people that I used to hang out with a lot. And even like just seeing how Ash performs, I learned so much from him personally when he was going out. And he took me to a gig, I think, to just see how it was. He got permission and I rocked up to this gig and he just did his thing and I just kind of like stood there and took notes. It was, it was really important. But it got me connected to these guys. Another person which now is just incredible is Taylor Morgan, who competed for the UK in FISM. I think it was the last FISM, not the one that just went. But I remember that guy, learning coin tricks in the Magic Society, and all of a sudden he's a FISM act, and it's insane. So it's lovely to meet these guys and go on this journey with them and learn from each other. I think it's really important.
I can tell. And let's switch gears for a second and talk about creativity, because in recent years you've become known as someone who's created a lot of magic, and I want to kind of delve into that and delve deep into that. So before we talk about your journey into creativity, what originally made you want to create? Did you start creating just for yourself? Or was it for a desire to actually release product? And if it's not, like, what made you decide to then go? How did that all come to be? Not necessarily just yet the journey you went on, but the thought process that happened that led to you, creating and marketing tricks.
So, right, it started off with just looking at really simple tricks. And I think one of the first ones was where the card is scorched in the deck.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Where, you put a lighter over it and then when you go through, the cards burn. And I really liked that. But for me, there was an element missing. Like, you don't just take a lighter and hold it over a card and go, oh, look, the one in the middle is burned. So I thought, how could you make that a bit more impossible? So I started learning how to create smoke from fingertips using, the match method, where you burn the piece of the match and you wipe up the goop. And then, have you ever seen that before?
No, I haven't. No.
It's you kind of light a match. There's it's a scientific thing, but you get this brown stained stuff on your hand, so you can rub it and you get smoke coming from your fingertips. So immediately I thought, if you put a card in that, I could now rub the deck and the smoke would come from the deck. So it was just something really silly like that, really just sparked thinking a bit different, because it would just complement the effect, really. And that's how I started just creating little bits. So it was all for myself. And then the big one that came was the Bang Sharpie. Now, that local pub that I was talking about was the real playground for me. And I said something to somebody about, just I'm going to the Blackpool Magic Convention. I'm absolutely just nobody. I've never been before. People have no idea who I am. I need to have something. I need to find something which would be fun and would catch magicians out. And he kind of said to me, "Well, I'm an engineer and stuff. I could make something for you, but you've got to give me an idea." And I just walked into a joke shop with a street performer from Berlin that I befriended, and he came to visit me. And he just said, "Oh, Harry, yeah, you've got to try and always keep on your feet. You've got to reinvent yourself. And sometimes you'll find inspiration in things which you have no clue about." And we walked into this joke shop, and this woman tried to sell us an exploding pen. And when the penny just dropped, I looked at him thinking, "Mate, has anyone ever put a snapper in a Sharpie? Because that would just be genius handing that to a magician. They would have no clue, right?" So I went to this engineer and I said, "Could you make a snapper fit in this Sharpie?" And yeah, that's exactly what he did. Yeah, so come Blackpool, the first ever convention I did, I was walking on with a Domino's pizza name badge, something just ridiculous. I was constantly having a pizza in my armpit so I could flash produce a pizza. It was just stupid stuff because I knew people would come up to me and saying like, "Oh, Harry, could you do a trick?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, watch this," and make a pizza appear. Just absolute sheer stupidity, right? And then get a signature by saying, "Oh man, I don't know you, but could you sign this card for me so I can take it?" And yeah, I had Stephen Mulhern who called me, "See you next Tuesday," which was hilarious. Richard Jones then just done his Britain Got Talent, so I met, I had so many people, and that's what people just talking about, is this bloody Bang Sharpie thing, and it got a lot of attention, which led Kieran then to say to me, "Well, I've pitched this to Saturn," and then that was it. They released it in the following year at Blackpool, and at that point then, yeah, I wasn't really looking or creating anything, but things just fell into my lap because I was engaging with people around the world. And the second ever release I had was Wallet Hacker, which the Real Workers took on. Now that was just a beautiful idea because I mean, you reviewed it, and
I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Before we
just
talk about Wallet Hacker, because I do want to talk about that. Before we do, I
yeah,
don't want to jump ahead to Wallet Hacker because I do
sure.
want to get into that. Before we do,
Yeah.
you talked about your interest in creating.
Hmm.
The first trick, Bang Sharpie, was
Yeah.
your first release, and you did it through Saturn,
Yes, yeah.
who you've been affiliated with from sort of day one. And
Yeah.
I suppose before we get into Wallet Hacker, because I'd like to discuss the timeline.
Yeah, of course.
What made you decide to go to Saturn? What made you do? So you've got what I'm trying to say is you've got this idea for this pen.
Yeah, yeah.
Bloody brilliant idea, by the way. I love it.
Yeah.
Ryland scares the hell out of everybody at a convention. He just runs with it, just scaring the hell out of people. What made it's automatically going to sell because magicians are going to look at it and go, "Yeah, I want that." What made you decide to go through a company as opposed to doing it yourself? Because a lot of people do. What made you decide to do it through a company, and what made you decide to do it over? With Saturn. Not there's anything wrong with Saturn. Saturn, right? But there's so many different companies, and I'm always finding it interesting. And it's why I always ask this question. When people come into creativity, how do they end up because you tend to find it an awful lot, like people come in and they release everything through this one company or everything through this other company, or and what made you end up with Saturn? What was the story behind that?
Well, I made this real good friendship with Kieran, and Kieran he went on a lecture tour through Germany. Now, he said, "I need someone to drive, I need someone to speak German." And I looked at him, I thought, I do both of those things, right? So I ended up going on his lecture tour with him for, I think it was just like shy over a month, something like that. And we were just traveling through Germany. And we were just chatting about some stuff. And I mentioned to him that I had the exploding pen, and the people at the convention just went mental for it. And people were wanting me to make him 20 of them there and then. And he kind of said to me, "Oh, wow, there's a lot of weight behind that, right?" And I said, "Well, I don't know how it works. I've never even considered selling a magic trick before, and this is just a prank." So I was very, very like confused by how it would all work anyway. And after we came back from the tour, Mark Travisoni messaged me and he said, we really like the Bang Sharpie, would like to feature it in Blackpool. Would you be interested not only not only for Bang Sharpie to be released, would you like to come to the stall at Blackpool? And that was like, wow, okay. Well, yeah, why wouldn't I? So the third ever time I attended Blackpool, Saturn Magic purchased me, but almost, to be there. So I got to this Magic convention for free. I'm being paid to be here, and I'm releasing a new effect called Bang Sharpie, right, or a prank or trick, whatever you want to call it. So because I knew a lot of Kieran's material anyway, because I've been performing it and selling it and everything, it kind of just was a natural transition for, I think, Saturn. They just knew, well, Kieran's a bit of reliability when he wants to be, likes chatting and socializing. And they're like, well, we need somebody to sell the product, so Carrie can do all that. So I became this like mini seller for Kieran, really. Yeah, and I just stuck with him, and this would be my fourth Blackpool now, being with Saturn on the stand.
That's great. And so, but the second release wasn't with Saturn. I love Wallet Hacker. For those people that don't know, it's a way of doing a card to wallet, but with a spectator's wallet, really, if you wanted to. Which is, or with any wallet. It doesn't have to be a card to wallet, using one simple gimmick, and it's genius. It really is. Such a clever idea. I think it's one of the best things that Real Workers did when they were around. So what made you decide to go with Joel?
So it was it's probably my second Blackpool at Saturn, right? Or with Saturn. And at this point, they brought on Infinity. So he was there selling his creations, and he had Revelation Gun, which is, again, phenomenal. I love that trick. And I was trying to, maybe it gave me a bit of a competitive push a little bit, because I said, oh, I've got all these ideas. Why don't we discuss them? So we're chatting about them. And I had the prototype of Wallet Hacker with me, and it was a business card, rather than a debit card. And I remember pitching it to Mark Travisoni then, and he just said that he thought that there were too many similarities with other released products like that, and he couldn't quite get behind it. So I thought, that's fine. And at the Ruskin later on that evening, I was just messing around, and I just happened to perform it to Joel and Andy, and they loved it. And there was another trick that I was playing around with at the time called Izoro, which is what it's known to be now, which was a deck balance. Now, I was doing that deck balance in the end of a Sharpie with a loop around. So I was doing a haunted deck suspended at the end of a Sharpie tip, and they immediately wanted to snap that up. So I thought to myself, well, here, I'm in a really good position here. So I went back to Saturn and I went, well, by the way, Izoro wants to be snapped up by so-and-so, and Wallet Hacker, they want to take that on. So yeah, it kind of came that way, and then Wallet Hacker did become the second release, and then Izoro came out with Saturn again, along with other things. But I think it was more of trying to get a foothold in following up from Bang Sharpie. All of a sudden now you've got, two actual card tricks or card effects that are generally magic effects. So maybe I just needed to prove myself, or maybe Mark gave me a bit of a journey to learn how to prove myself, and I didn't sell myself enough, or I'm not too sure, but whatever it was, it worked, because ever since then, any idea which I feel is great generally does make it to market now. So yeah, I don't know what else to say towards that, really.
That's great. No, that's awesome. That's fun. And obviously, after all of this, I'd say arguably your biggest release, your most popular release, the one that you're very well known for, is Haribo.
Yeah, Haribo. What a great thing that is.
Amazing trick. Great name for a trick as well. So how did that come about from you? Because there's a lot of people that are going to be watching this, and they're desperate to create a magic trick, and they're trying to figure out how to do it. What's your creative process for something like that? How did you go from having no idea, having this trick come out that universally has been just taken on and used by workers all over the world? What was your creative process? How did that come to be?
So I met a German magician called Wilhelm Knoche, and I think he's quite a successful magician in his area. And he actually customized his jacket, right? And every pocket did something. And he had a top it on the inside, but the top it was it was like a PVC squished tube. I can't quite explain it, but it led from his jacket all the way down into his trouser pocket. So he would launch something in there and it would just go all the way into his pocket, right? And then he said, oh yeah, sometimes I put a sweet packet in there of some sort. And then he showed me a Haribo packet, and I looked at it and I said, oh mate, you can generally just make a cut in this and it would, it's concealed. He says, yeah, exactly, that's kind of, but he loads it onto this top it thing, right? So anyway, forgot about the entire thing, wasn't really interested in any of that. And then later on, I was playing around with doing a ring banish, and it just struck me where I thought, oh, what if it was a transposition where it went from a ring to a sweet, but then the ring was actually in the packet of where the sweets came from. And then I remembered Wilhelm, showing me how you can actually open up a Haribo packet. So yeah, I had a prototype made of a rough idea that I thought it would work, and it just happened to hit bang on. It just worked. Everything was flawless. The size of the loader just fits, like even big signet rings. You can just, you just couldn't believe how easy it was. So then it was all about the routining, really, because I already knew that the method was going to work in principle. So I needed to come up with a really nice, fun routine. And being a student of Kieran's and having a playfulness, and it all just fell into place. I just knew exactly where it was going to go, and that's exactly how it came, or what it became, really. So I got a lot of inspiration from a few people there, and yeah, it just got born. It just appeared. And I think the perfect thing was, because my name is Harry and I spell, it's a shortcut of my surname, Harrington, and because it's with an I, it just made perfect sense to name it Haribo with two R's, and that's how it came about.
That's awesome. So what advice would you give somebody who wants to be a creator? They want to create, they want to be a creator, they want to make an income. They've listened to this interview, they've heard you. Having more than one income stream is great when you're a professional magician. They absolutely are on board with this. They want to be a magic creator. What steps should they go through to get there?
I think you shouldn't force it, because I know I wanted to create magic really early on, but I didn't know that's what it's called, right? I just thought you're improving the trick here. I think everybody has bought a trick, looked at it and thought straight away, I'm going to amend that, I'm going to change this, there's something that I can add which will improve it, or it'll be better for me to perform it this way. And you're already there, right? And if you don't think like that, then maybe you need to start training that part of your mind where you can think a little bit further outside the box. But I think Adam Wilber says it, that creativity is a muscle you can train, or your brain's a muscle you can train, and you just need to unlock that first initial thing where you go, oh yeah, maybe it'd be cool if I did this, and even if it's an improvement of something. So best thing I can probably comment on it recently, I don't want to get his name wrong, but I think it's Charlie Robinson who brought out Scar with Ace Magic Studios.
Yeah, I think it was, yes.
Yeah. I bought that because it was incredibly visual. Actually, I didn't buy it. Steve gave it to me. But I remember seeing it and just being able to see that trick and then add another element to it where it would, you got 3 cards selected, you tear it, it becomes, or I think it's 4 cards selected, you reveal the one, you tear it, it becomes 2, and then it becomes another one. And Charlie's taken that idea, done something with it, and then improved it by adding something else, which he probably never really pushed to be a release. He didn't create that for a release. He just came up with a really fun idea. If you look at Luke Oslin, for instance, some of the stuff he comes out with, I know he creates a lot of stuff for social media, so he's playing around with a lot of things, and it just happens, and then it becomes a product that you can buy. And Elliot's the same, I met Elliot at the session, and all these guys are like, they're just messing around with stuff, which is kind of how a release becomes something, because you get an inspiration or you see an idea, you play around with it, you adapt it, you make it your own, and then something might just happen. And that alone then starts becoming a release. And to give you a really great example of that, so it hasn't been created yet, but I'm going to throw it there. So hashtag it's shotgun, it's my thing. Still playing with it. But Card to Crunchy is one of my absolute go-tos. I love it. It's always a great closer. Some audience member at some event said to me, wouldn't it be cool if you could just take the wrapper and it would just restore? So I'm looking at this guy going, wow, okay. So I take the wrap and immediately I'm coming up with some method, right? And the first thing I thought was a bit of memory foam or something, which you do a shuttle pass. So you take the wrapper, do a shuttle pass, leave it on the table and say, yeah, that'd be cool, watch this. And it just unfolds itself and it becomes a restored chocolate bar again. So you're almost telling the audience that you're resetting your magic trick by doing another magic trick it's just crazy, that whole concept of it. And it's all done because an audience member just made a really silly comment, but it really starts getting the ideas rolling with you of how can I make that happen? And once you go down that journey and you actually create it and you make that a thing, then you really know that you can just put your mind to any kind of thing and create a trick from it. But it generally comes from playing with different effects and just getting a bit of inspiration. And there's so many stories about that, like Chad Long with his spaghetti trick. That's the perfect example to just go off.
I completely agree. 100%. 100%. And that's amazing advice. So here's the thing, like, since Haribo, you bought a few more things out. We're coming up on the Blackpool Magic Convention now. By the time people watch this, the Blackpool Magic Convention will have been and gone.
Yeah.
You've got a new trick that's coming out of Blackpool, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But before we do, Haribo was such a big success. Do you ever worry that as a creator, you're not going to be able to match that? Like, people said to me, for example, with the quantum deck, well, you've peaked now, Craig, that's it, everything's downhill from there, you're never going to be able to get the quantum deck again. And it's kind of, as a creator, you're only as good as your last release. You could have the greatest trick in the world, then if your next trick isn't great, people judge you on that. So, like, do you worry about, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to match this, or is that something that doesn't really even concern you?
So I think definitely Bang Sharpie was like that. I thought, what am I going to do next? And then I had nothing got released, and all of a sudden something else did. And it then just spiraled from there. But I've never, only at that point I worried, how can I follow this up with? But then I actually thought, no, what's more important is how can you stay relevant in the magic world? Because that's, I feel like, what it comes down to, right? If you're about a lot and you constantly playing around with something else, you're sharing other bits. Like the French twins are amazing for sharing some crazy stuff when you see them and you jam with them, right? They constantly share these crazy things and you're like, wow, that's amazing. And it doesn't matter if they haven't had a release out for the last 2 years, because you still remember seeing them doing something incredible that you thought was great. So it's all about, I think, almost want to say, like, keeping up an appearance to a degree, right? Even though that's probably not accurate, but I don't worry so much about how to follow up on a trick, because there's other, also you've got to reinvent yourself. That's the other thing. So if you're constantly just bringing out a card trick which requires an Elmsley count and you're just changing the outcome of it each time, you're not really pushing yourself, right? So what if I said to you, I'm working on a mentalism piece, I've got this mentalism effect that I'm working on. People would be like, yeah, but you just made like a Rubik's Cube explode. You're like, yeah, that was then, but now I've got this. And Christian Grace is a perfect example for that, with with the different transitions of where he goes through and stuff that he's doing. So you've got to reinvent yourself. And I think in order to follow up a previous release, you do need to take those risks, and you do need to push other things, because everyone's got this passion or this love inside for an effect which has got nothing to do with your previous work. But when you hit it and it's incredible, then it just overtakes it. Best way I like to compare it to is singers, how many people have released, or how many artists released a song which they absolutely hate, but it's the pure banger that everybody knows, when actually they're probably more proud of something else because of the backstory that went into that. And for them, that's their personal highlight and their achievement, regardless of what other people think. But yeah, I've never really worried about following, especially not the last couple of years, following up a release to make it as relevant as the previous one.
And on that subject, do you ever, writers call it writer's block. Do you ever have like a period of time where, you're just banging your head against a brick wall and you can't come up with anything? And if you do,
Yeah.
that's that.
I had a tattoo appointment today and we're chatting about it. And this person asked me that same question today. How crazy that you're asking me that now. So the answer I gave her is what I'll tell you as well. It's really important to write ideas down. Okay. And if you do come across a block where you're not able to come up, or you're not being inspired by anything, go through your notebook and pick up a previous idea that you had, which you haven't given it enough time for. Because if you were to go back now and look at it and go, oh yeah, right, okay, you've immediately got a starting point with an ending of what your idea was to begin with, but you're missing the middle piece. So you should have enough information to just trial some other stuff. And even if it fails, well, you just make another note going, okay, that didn't work. That method is, it's not great. So then you can come back to it. And if it takes you 5-6 years to get to the conclusion of how it would work, well, then that's it. But you're never stuck for anything at any point, because you can just pick up at something else. So your inspiration, your own inspiration, really.
That's really good advice. This is a masterclass, Harry. This is great. This is amazing. This is fantastic. So, since Haribo,
yes,
obviously you've had the Bang Cube, you've had a couple of other bits and pieces, but at Blackpool, and as I say, this interview is going up after Blackpool. So at Blackpool, you're bringing out a new trick, which is based on what 3 words? And I was privy to seeing it, and man, it's killer. It's such a great idea. It's one of those things, when you were describing it to me, I was just like, shit, I wish I'd thought of that, man.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. No, it's a cool idea. I don't know how much I can show of it really, but this is what it is. It's in Blackpool now. It's a limited run of it at the moment, because we want to do something with it. We want to make it a little bit bigger. So we're testing the waters with this and see what comes up with, and how well it does. And if it does really well after Blackpool, then yeah, we're definitely going to be getting more of these in. But this was, a friend of mine, David Marks, who hopefully you'll hear more about. But he just came up with this thing. He only lives down the road. He came with a drink and whatever, and he said, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool if a spectator could name any landmark in the world, and then you had a deck with random words. They picked any 3 random words, and it then would reveal exactly that landmark using the app, what 3 words." So I looked at him and I kind of thought, how would you make that possible? And that was it. He left. And I rang him up and I said, Dave, I've got it. I know how this could be done. And that's what we rolled with. And this is then the development stage started happening, So for the last, I think 4 months, 5 months, we've been playing around with different ways and outcomes, what's best, how to perform it. So yeah, it's now a finished thing, which is great. So we'll see where it goes, where it takes us.
Fantastic. That's awesome. I want to ask you one more question as well.
Okay.
Is the subject of lecturing. I mean,
oh yes,
I saw you lecture at the Magic Circle. That was one of your first lectures, was it not?
So I'd done previous ones, but it was probably the biggest one for me, for sure. That was probably the biggest lecture I've ever done up to that point. So prior to that, I'd done about four or five. But it was for sure the biggest one for me, because it was on stage, had the big screen behind me, had people on Zoom, had people in the audience. So it was a very different feel, for sure. And it's the Magic Circle. I mean, come on.
Absolutely. It's a very nerve-wracking experience. So what made you decide you want to go and start lecturing? Was it as an extension of creating? It's kind of like, well, I've got all these ideas, I want to share them with people?
So the reason why I got into it, there's a gentleman, you might even know him. I don't know how far away from Coventry you are, but
Not that far.
yeah, there's a magic club in Coventry, and I believe the gentleman who runs it's called Richard Dixon. Dixon,
Okay, yeah. Name rings a
yeah.
bell.
And he approached me at the stand up that call, and he said, Harry, I really like you. I want you to come and lecture for us. Would you be interested? And I thought, oh wow, okay, yeah, I actually have. Yeah, I'll be up for it, because you should never turn down an opportunity, regardless of how of how unprepared you are. So that really pushed me then to put my thoughts together, and then I wrote some lecture notes. And sadly, we went into lockdown very shortly after that. That was the Blackpool where we all went into lockdown after in March, straight after the convention. I spent then my entire lockdown pretty much writing everything down and getting this lecture note pamphlet produced. So through that, all these other ideas that I had started to come up. They started to spark up, and I was just jotting them all down. And then I had a lecture ready, and I thought, cool, okay, well, we're still in lockdown. I'll just do an online lecture for the Cardiff Club. So I did the online lecture for the Cardiff Club. That went really well. Then there was another online, a Facebook group. What were they called? I think it was Magic Live Chat or something like that. It was Clive Beatty and Steve, I think he calls it, yeah, on Facebook. They run that group, and I asked if I could lecture in there, just giving something back. So I lectured in that, and I filmed that performance, so I had it. Come out of lockdown, and then we're still in lockdown, and a magic club then from London asked me to lecture for him. So I was like, doing another online lecture. So at this point, I was getting really confident in doing online lectures. As soon as we came out of the lockdown, Phil Pearson down in Sussex, the Sussex Magic Circle, I think they call themselves, they booked me to lecture there, and I was like, oh great, this is really going somewhere now. And yeah, started then doing these lectures. North Wales Magic Circle in Llandudno. I think you were there or have been there.
Oh my
Sure.
God. Many.
But you definitely came after me in the Sussex one. I think you were literally like the next meeting after I was there, because everyone's saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, Craig's coming," and it was just around when the Quantum Decks was coming out as well. So it was so funny to be in there. "Oh, Craig's coming next." I was like, "Oh, really? Great!" It's funny. So yeah, that it just started happening. But what I then found, what I struggled with, is now I've got all this great stuff, which I absolutely love performing. But then whilst I was doing it, other things started cropping up. Haribo being one of them, because when I originally the lecture was there, Haribo hadn't really, it wasn't a release then. So all of a sudden I'm changing it, and I've got stuff now where I'm like, oh, I kind of got to perform it, because yeah, I do want to share this and get this sold if I can, but at the same time I want to share loads of other stuff. And I mean the effect, one of my absolute favorite effects is the Walt Disney one that you saw, which you did your 5x5 on. I mean, that is probably my most proudest thing, because yeah, I never be able to sell it. I can only ever publish it in writing, because you'll never be able to reenact it unless you know all the steps. But oh my God, what a feeling for that event organizer, that wedding couple, when you perform that trick for them. It's probably like the best thing I've ever combined, and that was all inspired by the stuff. But the mini hand, I mean, I was performing that all through lockdown, and then when it finished, I was like, oh, actually, this is a real cool trick. I need to keep this on. But I don't lecture that. So my lecture's constantly changing all the time. Where it's actually, yeah, I'm really establishing what route, what direction I'm going, and where my real strengths are. Because some of the stuff that I was performing in the lecture isn't, or that I had before I did the Magic Circle lecture, wasn't necessarily the material that I'm in love with now. So it's constantly change and shift. Whereas I think now, if you had me to lecture now, you're probably at that my highest, because I've got all these fun things. I love it. I'm so passionate about every single trick. And I know you spoke to Kev G, and that Minify trick. Oh my God! So that's one of my little private releases. Have you seen it?
It's great.
It's just so silly, and that was inspired by Kev G watching my lecture. It's just ridiculous. So, I like that kind of stuff. Really, really gets me buzzing, because it's another avenue, it's another thing that I can add and actually go, well, this is the gimmicked version of it. Like, why would you need a gimmick? But actually, it's better with the gimmick because it's so hands off. But anyway, I'm rambling on there. But
No, you're not at all. You're not at all. And one thing that I know, before the Magic Circle lecture, you were quite nervous.
Oh
which,
yeah.
You would expect. It's the Magic Circle. But you didn't show it on stage. I mean, you came across as very cool, very collected.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for dealing with nerves? Because you have only been in magic for 7 years.
Yeah.
And you've put yourselves in some bloody, very stressful situations where you're constantly being pushed out your comfort zone. I mean, just like very early on in your convention, in your career, you know, stemming at Blackpool to magicians, that's difficult. Lecturing at the Magic Circle, that's difficult. Any advice on dealing with nerves and pushing yourself out your comfort zone?
Yeah. So, where do you begin with that? So I used to get really nervous with doing a gig, really nervous. And a friend of mine, it's very actually what Ryland said, very like, on one of the videos with Matt, Ryland said excitement could come across as being nervous, right?
Yeah.
And a friend of mine said that to me, and I kind of thought, yeah, you're right, but you're not, because clearly how I'm feeling isn't. But no, actually, it is because you care and you want to do a good job, right? Because if you didn't care, then you're not going to be at your best. So the best way, I think, or the best advice really to get over nerves is to not be afraid to be put through situations which you haven't experienced yet. So if you've got preparation, I think, is the big one. Like, if I'm prepped and I've got everything on me that I know, even if I'm missing something, but I've been in that situation, I'm still prepared for that possible worst situation. And I all my nerves started to immediately stop, because you prepared, right? You've done it, I don't know how many hundreds of times. So it's repetition and being prepared and not being afraid to have a bit of fun. I think the big issue you've got is everybody hides behind a magic trick, when actually, if my card reveal is wrong, I could have such a personality that making a joke out of that would actually be the funniest thing, and completely distracts everybody to the point where I'm able just to find the card and do a top change or a switch or whatever, and then I've actually just brought it straight back again. So dealing with nerves, I think you just need to keep doing it, and don't be afraid to be put in a situation where you are, which is going to catch you off, because that will actually give you enough experience and knowledge that later on, if you were, nothing can go wrong, because you've already experienced all that, you've already had all these problems, so you know how to get out of it, and you trust in yourself to get out of those problems, right? So that is probably the best way to deal with nerves. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but for sure, I mean, if I drop the lollipop now, but fast producing it as an opener, for instance, you just need to come up with a joke. But if I've dropped it, why couldn't I just look down, load another one, and pretend I'm doing the foot pickup and just making it appear? Like, you just got to be quick thinking on your feet. And if you're able to do that, then there's nothing really to worry about at all, because you're always going to be prepared for something. And also, the audience never know where it's going to go anyway, so you could generally be the worst magician, mess up every single trick, but you just need to land that right one, that one absolute hit, and you are the best person they've ever seen. So yeah, I would definitely say the best way to deal with nerves is probably practice enough in the real world on people that you're not really bothered by, and just be prepared a lot, and just get the experience, get the road time, because if something goes wrong, you know how to steer that and take it. Does that make sense?
It does. Absolutely does. 100%. Wow. I got one more question.
Yeah, go for it.
I keep saying one more question, but
I could talk all out. I could talk.
I can keep thinking of things to ask you.
Yeah.
It's been an amazing interview. What's next? Because you've only been in magic for 7 years.
Yeah.
You're full-time pro. You make your full-time income from magic. You've, been affiliated with Saturn for a long time. You've released lots of magic. You've lectured at the Magic Circle. You've done so much.
Yeah.
Best-selling tricks. I mean, you've done so much in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
What's left on your magical bucket list that you want to hit? What goals are you wanting to do?
Yes, I absolutely want to lecture at Blackpool. I'd love that. I would also love to lecture at the session. There's just something about that convention which is amazing, and being part of that would be phenomenal. I would love to fly out to the Magic Castle, and I've been told actually to have a bit of a competition to try and get there before you. So that'll be quite fun. So I'm gonna
that's a goal of mine as well. So definitely
taking that on. I think at the moment I'm just going to focus on those things. I would love to break out a bit bigger in the lecturing side, because I absolutely love that. I don't think there's anything more rewarding than being able to share ideas and creations with other people. But it almost sounds a bit super selfish, but it's nice when you've got the talking stick almost, and you can actually give people a little bit of an insight into what goes on in your head to then help them, maybe. So it's nice when you get the opportunity to speak. So I think, though, definitely doing those three, and then after that I haven't really thought much of where I want it to go. I think Blackpool would be the absolute highlight. Lecturing at Blackpool would be phenomenal, and getting the lecture at the session would be great. And apart from that, I'll continue having fun and see where stuff takes me. And if other releases come out and I get to meet and collaborate with other guys, or I get the opportunity to work alongside other people, it's only gonna fulfill everything that I've never really looked for. It's coming. I'm like, oh, that's great, and I can take every step and be happy along the way, rather than expecting it or demanding it, so to speak. So I'm quite open to where stuff takes me. But yeah, who knows? Who knows where it's gonna go? But those are the next steps, I think, for sure. I'd love to achieve that, and then after that, I don't know. I don't know, Craig. I've been putting on a few little like shows in and around the area, but I'm not really wanting to do that constantly. I just really don't know. I think I just want to continue having fun, and just, yeah, loving or earning an income from a passion and love. And if I can grow bigger in that area and share it with more people, then yeah, absolutely, be great.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question.
Okay.
Are you working on? You don't have to tell me what it is. I know it's probably in secrecy, but you're working on your next trick now. Have you got something in the pipeline that you kind of breaking in or thinking through?
Yeah. So there's always stuff. There's always stuff that's going on. Bob Hume makes the little mini hands. I've just struck a deal with Bob, had a little chat with him, so I actually get to have the little mini hands now, which I can start selling and showing people, because that would just love that trick. The Minify gimmick, if for those of you who haven't seen it, is something that just came together. It's great. I've got some really fun ideas. I'm just looking around now. I've got some fun ideas all stored in here. So one of my biggest dreams, and I'm so close to cracking it, is doing a 3-fly with chocolate coins. And I'm nearly there. I've nearly got the perfect chocolate coin gimmicks to do all the coin slides with. So that's kind of what's going on in the background. But there's so many other things that, I mean, I've got this whole notebook of stuff, and I think there's a lot of potential for some really good stuff to come out. And I just need to give it some more road time, and come up with better methods. And so, yeah, Craig, maybe I'll throw some ideas at you, and then you could be like, oh yeah, Harry, let's do that. So you never know. You never know.
Absolutely. And I got to ask this, because I know a lot of people have asked me about you before we wrap this up.
Yeah.
Lord Harri Harrington. How did we get the Lord in there?
So the Lord. Okay, so Nick Stein, he incredible person. he when I first met him, he said to me, "You need to create a brand, and you need to stand out." So I was like, okay. At this point, every time you see somebody, you know, they're called, I don't know, I got Nicholas Lawrence Magic, you know, or David Marks Magic. There's always this kind of stuff. But then there's a few that break the norm, like the hypnotician, you know, the mind boggler. I think Chris Hare is called the mind boggler. So and I kind of looked at all these names and I kind of thought, oh, how do you go about this? You know, how do you really break out into this world where you've got to separate yourself from people or from competitors realistically? So the first thing I looked at is I've got a really posh surname. You know, my surname's Harrington. So I honed in on that, and we've got a family crest, like most families do, but because it sounds posh, it's Harrington. You know, I thought, oh yeah, well we use the crest as my logo. Why not? So I had that. But of course, I wanted to do something else with it. I wanted like a little symbol. So I had the crown, you know, the crown really came from it, which is great. So I've got all this crown and the crest. So I had that all done. But I needed to still have a name. I needed something else rather than just because my name's actually Stephen, right? And
I didn't know that.
yeah, I didn't want to be called Stephen Harrington Magic or something. I thought, no, I want something. And everyone from the army always calls you by your surname, but my surname was such a mouthful. I was always known as Harry. So ever since I joined at the age of 18, I've been known as Harry. So that kind of, what's your name, Harry? It just falls off the tongue, you know. It doesn't matter. So I got given a Christmas present, and it was the Highland titles, you know, land in Scotland kind of thing. And this is way before I was even into Magic. So then I went through the application, you know, changed all my stuff, which is great. Why wouldn't you? So my debit card says Lord Harrington on it. My driver's license says Lord Harrington on it. So I just kind of thought, well, how many lords are there in Magic? And I had a look, and there were none. So there was no magician called Lord something. So I thought, oh, great, okay. So then Lord Harry, I thought, oh, great. I mean, that's it. That's why wouldn't I? And that's how it just came about. And yeah, since then, I think on certain things, like with the real workers, it just says Harry Harrington on there. But again, that's not even my name, which is hilarious. So it's cool. But Lord Harry is just kind of a thing. Oh, yeah, it sticks. It works. People like look up, and you can't misspell it as well. If you were to type in Lord Harry or something, you know, it'll just pop up. So rather than try and remember what your full name is as a performer, I mean, no one forgets the name Dynamo, do they? Like, no one forgets that. So Lord Harry, yes, that's the guy. Lord something. Oh, look, what's the prince called? Harry. Oh yeah, Lord Harry. So that's kind of where my thought was with that.
That's great. And you know, there's nothing more important than Nick Stein was right. You know, creating a brand, making yourself stand out,
Yeah,
doing something that, you know, makes you different. That's so important.
it does get a bit too much because like I've got Phil Pearson, where's my hat? Kieran, where's my hat? You know, Sam Sugarman, who I know you know, he wears my hat. It's just like, wow, okay. So people are walking around now with flipping merchandise of me. I'm like, it's not even bringing it out. You know, it's not like I've got merch, but yeah, it's funny when people start wearing your own stuff. And you think, yeah, it's pretty cool, man.
That's amazing. Buddy, this has been a fantastic interview. So thank you once again for coming on the channel. I learned a lot, and you are, I said it at the beginning of the interview, and I meant every word I said. You're an amazing guy. You're a really, really, really nice guy as well. And I see you just helping people who you don't know. You go around conventions, people will come up to you who have never met you before,
Yeah,
and you'll
yeah.
just sit down. It's just great to see. We need more people like you in Magic that's
God bless you.
talented and skillful and giving, most importantly, giving. If people want to connect with you on social media, what's the best place to do so?
Yeah, so Instagram, Facebook is perfect. Lord Harry Magic. Yeah. Harry with an I, don't forget. That's the catchphrase. Yeah.
And also, if people want to buy your stuff, is it best to go to Saturn Magic where everything is?
It depends what you're after. I mean, some stuff I've got in stock here.
Okay.
You
How
know,
will people reach out with you for that?
yeah. It's just if there's something which I don't have, then I can also guide you to the right place. But if it's something I've got and it's in stock, and I've got it here in my office, then for sure, not a problem. I'm more than happy to. 'Cause, it's like you will actually be able to get it in cheaper than what it gets sold for. But yeah, I mean, if you don't if you don't want anything, you just want to learn how something works, or just give me a message. I just want to jam with people. It's amazing, like connecting. The amount of times I've rocked up on some Zoom call and I'm like with guys from Indonesia or something. It's just hilarious. No one can speak English. You just all showing each other card tricks. It's just fun. That's what it's all about. So if you want to jam, just hit me up. I'm always up for something.
That's great.
Mm.
Like I said, you're an amazing guy. I know you're going to continue to be very, very successful in the industry. What you've achieved in 7 years is just ridiculous. I mean, the fact that you've achieved 7 years ago, you didn't even know how to do magic. In 7 years, you're creating, you're performing, you're lecturing at the Magic Circle. It's insane. Long may it continue. Congratulations, Harry. You are fantastic.
Well, you're amazing as well, Craig. Like some of the stuff you put out, especially your penguin lecture, was, oh, I need to tell you this. This is great. Can I jump on for something quickly?
Of course you can, yeah.
A friend of mine has traveled to Thailand on like some travel, never-ending travel, and he sent me a video. He's joined a circus out in Thailand, and one of the tricks he's performing is chop. And I just thought, I was like, oh my God, dude, so I love this, but I've never taken it for myself to do something with it, but I've always loved the effect, right? And he has just showed me the most incredible load of all times. So I'll show you after this, but it's just hilarious. But yeah, it's definitely be me performing that very soon. It's just a joke. But Craig, I think you put out so much content, and it helps a lot of people. So thank you for doing it, because mate, I love watching your videos and I love watching your content.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you so much. And everybody who's watching this particular piece of content, I want you to go and subscribe, like, follow, do all of the stuff that you need to do on Harry's profile. Leave a comment down below, because I'm sure he'll see it. Let him know how awesome he is. And make sure that you support him. If you haven't got any of his products, hit him up, send him a message, go and buy them, because they are brilliant. And and one more time, Harry, on behalf of Magic TV, thank you so much for coming on the channel.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Mate, you're great. Guys, thanks very much for checking out this Talk Magic. I will be back again soon with another interview right here on Magic TV on behalf of Lord Harri Harrington. Thanks very much, and we will see you again.